Welcome to Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Being a fireman, father, veteran, husband, world record holder, and Ironman, he brings stories of experience to impact your life while challenging you to live it. What do you want from your life? Why do you want it? Are you willing to go through the challenges to get there? If you have the courage to take that first step, let this podcast be the catalyst to start your fire while you bring the resilience to make it continue to burn. Our lives are made up of moments called right nows. So let's get started. Forged in the Fires podcast with your host, Fireman Rob, begins now.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. Today, I have an amazing guest. 20 years, more than 20 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. He has been a helicopter pilot, 4 combat tours, and he's one of 7 pilots to fly Marine One for the last 2 presidential administrations. He's an amazing individual who also, he has so many different things that are going on. We might as well just get to this. John Ballenger, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, Rob, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
I love it. And we were talking earlier, you got into the Marine Corps. I always like to go back because it's so awesome to hear the many different stories. And I think a lot of people need to hear these of when you started in the Marine Corps. Can you remember back to before you signed that dotted line? What was the mindset that was going through? And when did you start? How old were you when you started?
Well, going into the recruiter's office, I had been had a couple people in my family that had served before me, and definitely set the tone for service. And it was something that was always in the back of my mind. I grew up around aviation with my dad being managing an airport, so that was something that I'd always been used to. But when I walked into that recruiter's office, there was a sense of, this is my time. I'm young. I'm healthy. I've got the best years ahead of me. I need to do something that's significant. And I also wanted to do what the Marine, what the military advertises, which was see the world and get paid for doing it. And so, those things all combined. And fortunately, this is pre 9/11, but the Marine Corps was looking for helicopter pilots. So, and pilots in general. So it became a very natural fit, and I've definitely felt comfortable going into it. We've unfortunately been at war for the last 20 years, which was almost the entire time of my career. But, it has been just an eye-opening experience, and I've been blessed to have the stories to tell from that service.
Well, I can only imagine the stories have to be, this has to be like a bigger book than like the dictionary or, because I can imagine, being a helicopter pilot is not something like the fixed wing is one thing, but a helicopter pilot is another, because it goes against a lot of aviation rules.
Yeah.
And what was it? What made you want to be a helicopter pilot? And when you're going through that training, how do you get the confidence to be able to do not only just pilot it, but be able to go into austere environments and be that comfort for everybody who's in the back as well?
Yeah, well, one of the individuals in my family was a 20-year Navy veteran. Okay. And he said, John, if I could do it all over again, he flew F-18s and F-4s.
Oh, wow.
He said, if I could do it all over again, I would have started with helicopters and then transitioned to airplanes, because they're so dynamically different. But that's the way he would have done it. And, when you go into flight training, your desires aren't the only thing that gets you to where you end up. It's based on 3 things. It's based on the need of the service. For this part is the Marine Corps. It's based on your grades and how you do academically. And it's based on your preference, where you want to go, what, side of the country you want to go and what you want to fly in. So for those 3 things, it kind of worked itself out to be helicopters on the West Coast, which is ultimately where I ended up. But the thing going into flight training when you have no other flight experience, and then ultimately end up in combat is just really trusting the process. You look at aviation in the military, and we've come a long way, and we're continually trying to perfect and improve. And you can't get down to a no loss goal, but they're getting very close. And that's how training is throughout the Marine Corps. They're trying to perfect everything that we do, from the way we walk around and look at the aircraft to the way we start up and shut down, to everything that's conducted during the flights. So it's a continual process of trying to improve. And so before you go into those environments, you have to know that you are prepared for what you're going into, whether that's the first training flight or it's the first flight in combat or the first time flying the president. You have been trained for this, and you've been trained appropriately. You're not the first one to do it. You're not the last one to do it. And you just have to respect that process and know that, know that you're gonna be all right.
That trust that you build in yourself, that's so valuable. Being able to deliver that to like the next generation of helicopter pilots, but also at the same time, in the business world and everything like that. How did you, the first time that you were in combat as a helicopter pilot, what was your ability to be able to react in the situation? Do you remember like a certain specific time where you're like, okay, now it's on me. I need to trust myself in this situation. Do you remember a time like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's one instance that specifically stands out, and that was my first night dusty landing in Iraq. And we train a lot. I was stationed originally on the West Coast, out in San Diego, and we train a lot out near Yuma, Arizona, and out in the desert. And we work towards kind of the worst case environment, worst case scenario. Okay. So we start with day landings, and then we go to night landings where there's a full moon, and then we go to night landings where there's no moon, and then you start with a zone that's the dust is very minimal, and you work into an environment that really, really expands your box and it really plays off of everything that you've been trained to do. And so working on those fundamentals, hitting the same altitudes and the same airspeeds every single time you come in on a landing profile just sets you up for when you're doing that in combat, when you're doing that when the pressure is on, and the chance of making a mistake is very high. But if you go back to your training and you tell yourself, I've done this hundreds of times, same numbers, same airspeeds, same profile, it's going to work out. Right. Then you get in that environment and you trust in that process. You trust that training. You trust yourself to the standards you've been held to and you've held yourself to. And then when you get in that environment, it works out. And then that just builds your confidence. And so the first time I got into that environment, dusty landing at night, it was, every sense is hyper aware, but you go in and you do it. And then you think that's what all that training, that's what all that repetition is for.
Now I want to go converse to that, because I love the training of the military, because it really does. It pushes that envelope, and I can see why people want to have individuals coach them who have been in the military. Now, conversely, of all those things that you trained on, can you remember a time where things didn't go right? And the biggest thing I think I love about the military mindset is, even in a failure, it's a growth point. Can you remember a time, maybe while you were flying the presidents or anything like that, that you had one of those moments where, that adaptation or that adjustment didn't go the way it was supposed to, and you kind of went down a bunny hole? How did you get out of that bunny hole?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can really talk about, again, the training that we go through. We try to anticipate every situation before we experience it. Now, there's what we call compound emergencies. So one emergency, whether it's big or small, can lead to another emergency. Say a fire in the engine can result in your flight controls being burned through, and then they become ineffective. Well, in that situation, that I didn't have that situation happen, but if you don't stop and try to recognize the original situation, the original emergency for what it's for, then you can introduce your own compound emergency. You can see a fire light in your engine, which has happened to me before. And I reach up to grab that engine and to get ready to disengage the engine and shut the fuel off, and realized at the last second that I reached up and grabbed the wrong engine, the operating engine. And I was about ready to shut that off. Well, in that case, that would have created a complete engine failure. No engines are operating now at this point because of something I induced.
Right.
So the first step is to look up and take a deep breath and realize what you're doing. Take that split second, analyze, am I doing the right thing that I've known and been trained to do, or am I caught up in the moment? And usually that split second right there will help you analyze that, oh man, I grabbed the wrong engine. I need to grab the other one and shut that one off and shut off the fuel to that engine so that it ends the fire, extinguishes the fire. So, I've had situations, and especially in the simulator, where you induce your own compound emergency because you don't just take the time to breathe and recognize what you're doing before you do it. So
I love that. I love focusing on that first one, because it's such a hard thing. I think a lot, and I'm guessing you see this with your coaching, is a lot of people will focus on the compounding, the end of the compounding injuries or challenges, instead of fixing that first one that could take care of a lot of things.
Yeah. I recognized this when I first got out of the military. I knew that I wanted to do something different as I was getting out. And I knew that I had a path that I wanted to follow. But what happens is you get out and it's a new environment, and you can immediately be distracted by a ton of things and a ton of areas that you think you should go down, but action does not always show that you're busy. Being busy doesn't always produce results. So you could be spinning your wheels doing something completely off from what you're trying to focus on, because you just need to be active. You just want to feel like you're being productive. And I see that now with individuals that are transitioning out of what they have done for so long, and they want to start something new, but it's so broad and there's so many things to do at once that they can get inundated and lose their focus. So what I try to coach and help remind them is there's steps, little things that we can check off on a daily basis to make big gains, or 1% better every day. That 1% better every day leads to, 36% at the end of the year. So if we can just make the baby steps each day, it may not feel like you're making progress, but if you look at progress down the road, you're going to wonder where did that all come from? Well, it just came from baby steps that you can't necessarily see on a daily basis.
And that's so powerful, because I was very moved by your honesty and like some of the answers, like one of the challenges of your life. And I know it can't be easy to talk about, but that's when you talk about the small steps, navigating the loss of a child.
Sure.
And I know that's tough to talk about, and it's so powerful from your voice, like what you just said, because tell me more about how that experience had changed you in the moment, but also built you up for who you are now.
Yeah. So my wife and I we were stationed in Hawaii at the time, and we already had one child. our son. And, we were thrilled to know that we had a daughter on the way, and everything checked out normally up until birth. Yeah. And, once our daughter Brooklyn was born, immediately she was rushed to another hospital where there was a neonatal intensive care unit. And that's where she lived for 86 days.
Oh, wow.
And in the moment, those 86 days seemed to go very slow, and they seemed to be very, just no day after day, no real change, or no real, no, there's minor improvements, and then it would be, one step forward, two steps back type of deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then after 86 days, she passed away, and it left my wife and I trying to navigate how to raise our son, how to go through our marriage, how to step out our faith. All these things were greatly affected. And it was essentially starting over with almost all three of those things back at the basics, right. Raising our son. We had gotten him ready for when his little sister was going to be around, and then navigating those questions, with our marriage, it was going back to the core thing that brought us together, and the love that we had for each other, and navigating how we communicate the loss of this daughter, because men and women communicate so differently.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out those differences. Neither one are wrong. They're just different. And then it was our faith. How do we take a faith that we believe in healing? We believe in a good God. We believe that things will work out good for our lives if we just trust and follow God's will. And now that we have this loss, how does that change anything? Well, raising our son, it was just raising him with now the knowledge that he is still our only child, and he is going to be loved the same way he was for the last 4 years of his life, that will continue. For our marriage, it was just figuring out how we can communicate how we're feeling, whether it's a daily feeling or it's something that hits us at a weird time, and communicating that to each other. And for me, really understanding that even though this loss is continuing to define our relationship, that's never going to fully go away. And it's going to be something that we will navigate for the rest of our life. When guys kind of want to, provide a solution and an answer and fix the problem and then be done with it, that's not really what's going to happen here, you know? And then, for our faith, it's still realizing that God is good and faithful, no matter if we can explain what's happening to us here on earth or not. It's, our faith doesn't tell us that we're going to now be problem free and that we're going to navigate life with no questions and no difficulties. It just means that now we have a place to put our faith and a basis to build our foundation on. And one day those questions will be answered, but it might not be for us to know right now. And so
that's hard.
yeah, exactly. So we've navigated all three of those things, and now we have another son. And so we've grown, and our marriage has continued, which is amazing, because 83% of families don't make it when there's a death of a child. And so we feel very blessed to have each other, and the faith that we do, the faith has continued to grow. And now we're able to help other people navigating those situations, other families, and just let them know that we stand with them, and we didn't necessarily see the answer that we were expecting, but we can continue on with the faith that all things work together for good. And so that's really how we came through it all.
It's such a powerful and a difficult situation. I love you have a quote in here: "The stakes are high. You are the salt of the earth and the light on a hill." Tell me more about that, because I love that. I love the saying. What does that mean to you?
Man, it's so that quote. So I think that's a LinkedIn post I made. Yep. but that came from a sermon that I heard from my pastor, and it's my pastor here in Colorado Springs is a guy that I went to college with, and now I've kind of doing life with, and it's great because I've never had a pastor that's younger than me, and this is the first time. And but really, what that means is that, let's take my daughter for instance. She had 86 days to live. And I would venture to bet that she affected more people positively in those 86 days, and with her story continuing after she passed away, than most people have their entire life. And so the stakes are high, meaning every single person you come in contact with, you have a chance to touch their life, to influence them for the better, and to leave them knowing their true value. And so that is where we're called to be the salt and the light, because people need those seeds planted in them, and you never know when they need those. And so the best outlook is that everybody needs seeds, and just you're continually planting, you're continually feeding into people positively. You're showing them, what happiness looks like, what joy and sadness looks like, and doing life together, even if it doesn't always look amazing.
Yeah.
And so that was just kind of a call out to really feed into people's lives, because you never know if you're going to get another chance.
It's so powerful when you put it from my perspective. I look at your life and I look at all the things that you've done, and the experiences and the impact that you've made in so many different aspects, and to have the ability for you to be able to continue to impact people. What does that mean for you as a legacy? I mean, you've served in the military, you've secured the presidents in Marine One, you've had combat tours, you've endured the loss of a child, you continue to be a father for your children and a husband. What does it mean for you to continue to impact lives in your legacy that you're going to be leading?
Well, it means a continuation of what's been sown into my life. I made a post a while back, but it was about the guys that I call my 5 pillars. And those 5 pillars are 5 men that have really transformed my life. One is a pastor, one is just another mentor, and then 3 of them are business partners that hired me when I was in college and I needed a lot of mentorship. Those 5 men fed into me at a time where I didn't necessarily want to be fed. I didn't necessarily want to be molded, but they did it quietly and they did it with patience, knowing that one day, just like a farmer that plants his seed and patiently waits for that harvest. That's what they did. I couldn't have made it to where I was without my father, without my mother, without those individuals who have spoken into my life. So now that I've got this treasure trove of things that I've been through, some positive, some negative, it's my chance to plant those ideas, plant those foundations in other men, especially because pretty soon those are going to be the men that are taking on my sons as mentors. Yeah. And that legacy will continue. And you can't think without a second that what you do now isn't going to affect your family later on or your legacy later on. Your kids see everything. Your family feels those decisions that you've made. And so now is the time for me to feed in to other people so that those people will one day feed into my kids if I'm not here, or if my kids choose that they need their support from someone else. And so it's continuing that on.
I love that. I love that, man. John, you've given a lot of great wisdom. I love this. It's all about mindset. It's all about the perspectives of the other people. And I appreciate your journey. I appreciate your impact. I'm not going to, you can't leave yet because I got 3 questions for you. Are you ready?
Sure. All right. I think so.
Come on, please. You're ready for anything. All right. The first question, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
Stop caring about what everybody else thinks.
Oh man,
that
you sound like a dad right there. I love that.
Well, that was a part of my life where I tried to be everything to everybody. I had different clothes based on who I was going to hang out with, and I acted different based on who was around. And it just, it comes back to bite you. You can't do that. You got to stay true to yourself. And if I would have stayed true to myself back then, it would have just created a much more solid foundation later on.
Oh, I love that. All right. The second one, if, everybody's going through challenges and struggles different in their own life, it's unique. If you could give them 2 habits that they could incorporate into their daily life to continue to push forward, to continue to live forward, what would those 2 things be?
Wow. I would say bet on yourself more.
Yeah.
And reach out to others more. So bet on yourself. You're way more resilient than you think you are, and you can actually do more than you think you can. But we as humans let our minds affect so much action and inaction. And it's amazing to see people that come in and talk to me who have no idea what their potential truly is, but then after a couple sessions or a couple conversations, walk away with things that they've achieved that they dreamed about, but they just needed a little bit of encouragement and a little bit of holding their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
And the other is to reach out. There's people, kind of just what I was talking about the mentorship. There's people that are ahead of us and there are people behind us. Reach out to the people that are ahead of you doing the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
It's so easy to learn from them if you just ask, if you just take action. Hey, can I follow along and see what you're doing for the next 30 days and learn from you? People are honored to give that, that knowledge out for free.
Oh,
and then more importantly, once you gain that knowledge, pass it on to somebody behind you who's a step behind you.
Exactly. That's so I love that. All right, this last one's going to be fun. So if you could have coffee with 3 individuals, they can be deceased or alive, at a firehouse table. In other words, you can ask any question. It's going to be answered. There's going to be great conversation. Who would those 3 people be?
Man.
I love not giving you the questions in advance.
Yeah. It's weird because I could think of immediate people and then I'm like, no, there's gotta be somebody better. But, my first son, his name is Lincoln. That's his first name. And he was named after President Lincoln because I find him to be, an interesting character, an interesting figure in our history where he brought along people that didn't think like him to challenge his way of thinking and to really grow from what he didn't know. So I think Lincoln would have to be one. I would love, if Jesus was an acceptable answer, Jesus,
it is an acceptable answer.
is, man, to pick his brain, I would need a lot of
pots of coffee. Yeah, a lot of pots.
That would probably be a second. And I think, a forward thinker that's doing things that nobody else has done. I mean, there's so many people out here. Elon Musk is one to specifically name somebody that thinks, I think, outside the box. That's and without borders. It's just, it's encouraging. It's encouraging to just think with no limits. And, that's really encouraging again to what people think about themselves. They limit themselves so easily. And so to have somebody that thinks that way would be pretty cool.
I love it. Well, I appreciate your time today and I appreciate all the wisdom that you've instilled on us.
Robert, thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, make sure you join us next time. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a friend or family. To find out more about Fireman Rob or reach out about a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.